Welcome back to Heroes Next Door, guys. Thank you for tuning in. And from our last video, we got a lot of questions in regards to how to prepare for going into school, whether you're going into EMT school or whether you're going into paramedic school. We got some questions on, how I became a SWAT medic, how I became a flight medic, those kind of things. So we want to address a couple of those today. So I'm going to go right into what you should do and expect to receive when you start going into EMT school. So the first thing that you need to do is figure out, is EMT really what you want to do? And the best way to do that is actually go do a ride along at your local EMS service. Get a hold of them, let them know that you're thinking about going into the field. And many times they do maybe 1, 2, or 3 ride alongs with the company to let you see if you can handle it. Usually you gotta be 14 years or older, and once you do, you go into the service, you ask what they can do for you and what the process is. Every company is a little bit different, but do that. And what that's gonna do for you is actually give you an idea whether you can handle it. Can you see the blood, the guts, the gore, or even the stresses that we see? It's not all about blood, guts, and gore all the time. It's about going into homes that you're not familiar with, going into that unsafe zone, going into uncomfortable situations, and trying to make order out of that situation. And that's the time to figure out, can I do this or can I not? The next step you need to do is actually get a hold of somebody who's been in this business. Have a mentor. They are going to be able to help guide you through this process. School is school. You went through high school, you finished that up. Some of us may have struggled in high school, some of us may have done really well, but this is higher education learning. Even though it's EMT and it's your basic level, most EMT schools, are higher educated learning. So that they're not going to spoon feed you the information. They're going to want you to actually do some research. They're going to want you to read the books ahead of time, be prepared for class before you get there. So it's very important for you to get a mentor that you can study with or bounce questions off. It is going to be very important for you to maybe even create a study group. Once you're in the program, look around the class, see if there's anybody that is kind of in your same boat, that you have the opportunity to sit down and study and go over those questions. Because many times what I found is, those EMTs that go into class and don't have these kind of things, they go home, they try to study the books. When those questions come up, they don't know where to go. They go to the profs, but a lot of the EMT schools that I've seen and that I've mentored for, their profs are different for every subject. They may be teaching anatomy and physiology, and then the next one comes in and teaches about operations. They're two different people, so you don't have that consistency all the time. So having that study group, having a mentor is going to be key for going into EMT school. Now, making a transition from EMT to medic, that's a whole different ball game. Today in the United States, you can actually go right from EMT into paramedic school without having any time. Do I recommend that? No. I recommend that you get your EMT, start running, start taking some calls. When I went through, we weren't allowed to go right from EMT to paramedic school. We had to have at least a year's worth of service, and I think it was like 600 or 800 calls under our belt before we went to. That has changed, but you have the opportunity to actually, put some time in before you go. And why do I say that? Because paramedic school is another level. This is actually where you're going to get into, you're going to start treating patients. You begin the differential diagnosis process. And this is actually, if you screw it up, you can actually kill people. So it's very important for you to, really know what you want to do and take the next step. Again, have a mentor. I can't stress that enough. A mentor is going to help guide you through this. Whether it is a coworker that's already a paramedic, whether it's a senior guy, from another unit that you have, and even mentors that aren't in the business, to keep you motivated and keep you moving forward is going to be important. So the question becomes, okay, what's the difference between EMT and paramedic? And actually, what are the different levels? Here in Pennsylvania that I run, and I think most of the country, we have 4 different levels of service. We have first responders. That's your basic, lack of a better term, a Boy Scout. They're going to be your cops. They're going to be your firemen that have basic first aid. They have CPR. They may know bloodborne pathogens. They know how to use oxygen and those kind of things. But realistically, they're really good at doing that triage process for us. They're going to get there quicker than we can most of the time. They're going to assess that patient and figure out what resources are going to be needed. The next section is EMT. EMT-B is what we call it, and that's your basic level. It's roughly about a 600-hour course. Now, every state might be a little bit different, but that teaches you how to recognize early onset of heart attack, early onset of strokes, allergic reactions, and how to splint. But really where it begins to focus is you're going to start learning how to move patients safely from point A to point B. You're going to learn how to use a stretcher. You're going to learn how to drive an ambulance. You're going to learn how to cut cars apart in some courses, and you're going to learn how to get those people out of those cars using backboards and KEDs and all different kinds of tools. That's where your EMT-B really comes into play. Other states have what they call an EMT-I. We call it an EMT-A. It's an intermediate in between your paramedic level and your EMT basic level. And this is very important. We use them for that rural area or when you run on a MICU. An EMT-A or /I, wherever you're from, actually is that bridge. And what they do is they go back to school, they learn more anatomy and physiology. They start doing some of the basic skills that us as a paramedic do, you start to do. For example, you can put on 12 lead EKGs. You may not be able to interpret it, but you know where the leads go. You can probably start an IV, but maybe not push medications or have a limited amount of medications you can push through it. You can do a rescue airway, maybe an LMA or a King airway or something like that, but you can't do a direct laryngoscopy or direct intubation. You can give medications above and beyond what that EMT-B can, but you can't give the whole onslaught of medications that a paramedic can. That's where you're stepping up to that next level. Once you get to the paramedic level, that's pretty much the highest level you can get to here in Pennsylvania and most states because they are the ones that take care of the patients the most. There are pre-hospital doctors, pre-hospital PAs, and pre-hospital nurses. I get that. But I'm talking specifically about the 911 system. When you are in the 911 system, the paramedic can begin that differential process. They start diagnosing, they start treating, many times without saying, "Mother, may I?" They're actually using protocols that are set up by their state, and this is really designed to be an emergency room on wheels. Most ambulances are set up to take care of any life-threatening emergency. Within the first 15 minutes to a half hour, depending on how much you supply, they're there to take care of that. Whether you're delivering a baby or bringing somebody back from the dead and everything in between, that's what the paramedics are designed for. Hospital nurses, pre-hospital doctors, that's where you start getting into some of those critical care transport places where we need to take these very, very sick patients that may have extra things going on. Maybe they're already intubated and they got to titrate a vent and you got to set the PEEP and you got to set the tidal volume and all these other things that are going on. Paramedics can do that, but with an assistance of a nurse, the nurse can actually give medications above and beyond what our protocols are. They can get orders from a doctor to say maybe give blood products during transport. They can run a balloon pump and those kind of things. Now again, every state's a little bit different, so maybe some paramedics can do that in other states, but here on the East Coast and mainly in Pennsylvania, we can't do that kind of stuff. You have pre-hospital doctors. We have two here in Chester County, and they come out and they're mostly our medical command. They'll come out and assist us and do what we need to do to save lives. So to round this whole thing up, what you want to do is get a mentor, create a study group, and really take a good look at yourself. Am I ready for that higher education? Am I able to study on my own, read the books, and be prepared? Can I take the time out of my life to really study and make this thing happen? And if you do those three things, I guarantee you're going to be fine. There's lots of study things out there as far as apps and all that kind of stuff. Good stuff, but with those three things, you're going to do fantastic. So go for it. I encourage you. It's been a great field. So as we were sitting here, I got a text on the phone and asked, what does a mentor actually mean? And what we mean by mentor, you want to pick somebody that not only is just going to keep you on track, but they're going to push you to that next level. Mentors, whether you're looking at this already or you are looking at this as from a student, a mentor needs to be that person that is going to take you above and beyond what the classwork can do. For example, when I first started out being a preceptor and a mentor, I actually went to each of my students and developed our own plan of action for them during the process. I would actually give them lessons to do to bring back to them. So it takes what the school is teaching and brings it back to the student for the streets. What I absolutely hate is the preceptors and mentors that go out there, a student shows up at their station and they just sit around waiting for a call. And the only time they interact really is when a call comes out. Otherwise the mentor's like, go to the room, study your books. That's not enough. That's really not enough. What you need to be doing is getting a plan of action together, working together on those off times. Going over the medication list, maybe going over intubation, some of the tricks of the trade that we do. You're going to hear from a lot of your field preceptors, yeah, that's what the book says, but this is how we do it in the field. I hate that. That's wrong, because they should be doing what's in the book with the tweak of this is how we do it in the field, not changing what the book says, but making it better. Even for your test, you're going to be able to study for your test and answer the questions to the National Registry. That mentor should understand and teach you to that level of service.